Picture this scenario. It's 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. You're jolted awake by emergency sirens wailing in the distance. Your neighbor pounds on your door, shouting that you need to evacuate immediately. The power grid just failed across 3 states, and reports are flooding in about widespread civil unrest heading your way. You grab your bug-out bag, kiss your family goodbye to normalcy, and step into what could be the most dangerous decision of your life. Because here's what nobody talks about in the prepper community. For 90% of people, bugging out isn't salvation, it's a death sentence wrapped in survival fantasy. Today, we're going to shatter some dangerous myths and reveal the brutal mathematics of survival that could save your life. Let me start with a question that might make you uncomfortable. When you picture your bug-out scenario, are you seeing yourself as the hero of an action movie? Or are you facing the cold, statistical reality of what happens when unprepared people abandon their primary survival asset, their home? The survival industry has sold us a dangerous lie. They've convinced millions of Americans that when things go bad, the answer is to grab a backpack and disappear into the wilderness. But here's the truth that survival instructors won't tell you because it doesn't sell courses. Most people who attempt to bug out will be dead within 72 hours. That's not fear-mongering, that's mathematics. The average American adult can barely walk a mile without getting winded. Yet somehow, they believe they'll successfully navigate 50 miles of hostile territory with a 40-pound pack while society collapses around them. The disconnect between fantasy and reality is so vast that it's literally killing people. Consider this sobering statistic from wilderness rescue operations. Even in normal times, with professional search and rescue teams available, people die in the wilderness every single day. Now imagine that same scenario, but multiply the danger by 1,000. No rescue teams, no GPS, no cell towers, no hospitals, just you, your gear, and a world that's actively trying to kill you. Let's talk about something most preppers refuse to acknowledge, their own physical limitations. I've spent years in survival training, and I can tell you that the human body is both incredibly resilient and shockingly fragile. Your bug-out bag weighs 35 pounds? Congratulations, you're carrying 20% of your body weight if you're a 175-pound adult. Now try doing that for 12 hours a day across rough terrain while stressed, dehydrated, and operating on minimal sleep. Elite military units train for years to handle that kind of physical stress. You probably get winded walking up 2 flights of stairs. Here's a reality check exercise I want you to try right now. Load up your bug-out bag and walk to the end of your street and back. Not jog, not run, just walk at a normal pace. How do you feel? Are your shoulders aching? Is the pack digging in? Are you already thinking about how good it'll feel to put it down? Now imagine doing that for days, across broken pavement, through dense woods, up steep hills, in weather that's actively trying to kill you. And remember, you're not walking to the gym where you can quit whenever you want. You're walking toward survival, and stopping isn't an option. The human body breaks down in predictable ways under extreme stress. First, your feet start hurting. Then blisters form. Those blisters pop and become infected. Your back aches from the unnatural weight distribution, your knees start screaming on the downhills, your hips lock up from the repetitive motion. And that's just day 1. By day 3, if you make it that far, you're dealing with dehydration, exhaustion, and the beginning stages of malnutrition. Your decision-making ability degrades. Your reaction time slows. You start making the kind of mistakes that get people killed in the wilderness. I've seen tough, experienced hikers reduced to tears by a 30-mile trek in good weather with proper support. Yet somehow, suburban families think they're going to cover that distance while carrying everything they own and dodging dangerous situations. Here's a question I ask every prepper who talks about bugging out. Where exactly are you going? The most common answer I get is some variation of into the mountains, or to the national forest. That's not a plan. That's a suicide note. The wilderness isn't a magical safe space where you can live off the land and wait for things to blow over. It's a hostile environment that kills people every single day, even when they have proper training, gear, and support systems. When you add societal collapse to that equation, you're not escaping to safety. You're walking into a death trap. Professional survival instructors will tell you that the #1 rule of wilderness survival is don't go into the wilderness unless you absolutely have to. It's that dangerous. Yet somehow preppers have convinced themselves that running toward that danger is their best option for staying alive. But let's say you're smarter than that. Let's say you actually have a destination. Your buddy's farm 3 states away, or that cabin your family owns in the mountains. Great! How exactly are you getting there? If it's a genuine emergency that requires evacuation, you won't be the only person trying to leave. You'll be joining millions of panicked people, all trying to use the same roads at the same time. Those roads will become parking lots within hours. I want you to think about your worst traffic experience ever. Maybe it was trying to leave a football stadium after a big game or evacuating from a hurricane. Remember that feeling of being trapped in your car, inching forward, watching your fuel gauge drop? Now imagine that scenario, but instead of minor inconvenience, it's life and death. And instead of lasting 2 hours, it lasts for days. Your fuel runs out, your car overheats, someone desperate tries to carjack you, the roads become impassable due to accidents and abandoned vehicles. Suddenly, that 200-mile drive to your safe location has become a 200-mile death march on foot. And even if you somehow make it to your destination, who says they'll let you in? During the Great Depression, armed locals regularly turned away outsiders, even family members, because they couldn't afford to share their limited resources. In a real collapse scenario, that welcome mat you're expecting might be replaced by a no trespassing sign backed up by firearms. Let me tell you about the silent killer that takes more lives in survival situations than violence, starvation, and dehydration. Exposure. Your house isn't just a building, it's a sophisticated life support system. It maintains your body temperature, it protects you from wind, rain, and UV radiation. It provides a clean, dry environment where your immune system can function properly. When you leave that system behind, you're literally betting your life on a sleeping bag and a tarp. The human body operates within a very narrow range of temperature. Core temperature drops just a few degrees, and you're looking at hypothermia. It rises just a few degrees, and you're facing heat stroke. Both conditions can kill you in hours, and both are common in survival situations. I remember reading about an experienced hiker who died of hypothermia in North Carolina in July. He got caught in an unexpected thunderstorm, couldn't find adequate shelter, and his wet clothes conducted heat away from his body faster than he could generate it. He was found less than a mile from his car. That was one person with decades of experience in a relatively mild environment during a brief weather event. Now imagine that same scenario playing out with a family of 4 in the middle of winter during a prolonged crisis when no help is coming. The wilderness doesn't care about your survival plans. It doesn't care how much gear you have or how tough you think you are. Weather patterns that would be minor inconveniences in your climate-controlled home become lethal threats when you're living in a tent. Rain soaks through your gear and creates a humid environment where your body can't regulate temperature properly. Wind strips heat away from your body at an exponential rate. Sun exposure leads to dehydration and heat exhaustion faster than most people realize. And cold is the big killer. It slows your thinking, impairs your judgment, and makes you susceptible to the kind of mistakes that end lives. Even if you survive the immediate weather, the long-term health effects of exposure are devastating. Your immune system breaks down, minor injuries become infected, chronic stress weakens your body's ability to heal and fight off illness.
What starts as a simple survival situation quickly becomes a medical emergency with no medical care available.
Now we need to talk about the most unpredictable and dangerous element of any survival scenario: other people. When society breaks down, the normal rules that govern human behavior break down with it. The social contract that keeps people civil disappears overnight. And suddenly, you're not dealing with neighbors and fellow citizens. You're dealing with desperate, scared, potentially violent strangers who see you as either a threat or an opportunity. Here's what I want you to understand. When you bug out, you look like a target. You're obviously carrying supplies. You're clearly trying to get somewhere. You appear to have resources that others want. In a collapse scenario, that makes you prey. The lone wolf fantasy is exactly that, a fantasy. Humans are pack animals. We survive through cooperation, not isolation. When you strike out on your own, or even with a small family group, you're abandoning the greatest survival advantage our species has: community support. Think about the logistics of staying alert 24/7. If you're traveling with just your family, who's pulling security while others sleep? Who's watching for threats while you're focused on navigation or dealing with an injured family member? Professional military units operate in teams specifically because no individual can maintain constant vigilance. But the threat isn't just from obviously dangerous people. In a genuine crisis, even normally decent people become unpredictable when they're scared for their families. That friendly neighbor who waves at you every morning, if his kids are starving and you're carrying a backpack full of food, how friendly do you think he's going to be? And if you think you'll be welcomed with open arms in some rural community, think again. Rural folks are typically self-reliant, but they're also protective of their own. Outsiders, especially during a crisis, are viewed with suspicion at best and hostility at worst. You won't be seen as a fellow survivor looking for help. You'll be seen as another mouth to feed and a potential security risk. The harsh reality is, desperate people do desperate things. And when you're exposed on the road with limited resources and no backup, you're vulnerable to the worst of human nature. Let's talk about something that could kill you faster than exposure or violence: medical emergencies. Right now, as you're reading this, you probably take for granted the medical infrastructure that keeps you alive. Your prescription medications are available at the pharmacy down the street. If you have a heart attack, trained paramedics will be at your door in minutes. If you break a bone, the hospital is a short drive away. All of that disappears the moment you bug out. That daily blood pressure medication that keeps you from having a stroke, you've got maybe a 30-day supply in your bugout bag. What happens on day 31? That insulin that keeps your diabetes in check, it needs refrigeration, and your backpack doesn't have a freezer compartment. But it's not just chronic conditions that become life-threatening. Simple injuries that would be minor inconveniences at home become potential death sentences in the field. A twisted ankle that would normally mean a day on the couch could leave you immobilized in hostile territory with no rescue coming. I knew a guy who cut his hand while camping. Just a small cut from a can opener, no big deal, right? Wrong. The cut got infected. Within 48 hours, he had red streaks running up his arm toward his heart. If he hadn't been able to drive to an emergency room, he could have died from sepsis. Now imagine that same scenario during a bug-out situation. No clean water to wash the wound, no antiseptic, no sterile bandages, no antibiotics, no hospital. Just you, your infected cut, and the very real possibility of dying from something that could have been prevented with a tube of Neosporin and proper wound care. Children and elderly people are especially vulnerable. Kids get sick faster, dehydrate quicker, and have trouble regulating their body temperature. Elderly folks often have multiple medical conditions that require careful monitoring and medication management. Taking either group into a wilderness survival situation is essentially putting their lives at extreme risk. And let's talk about mental health. The stress of a survival situation can trigger severe anxiety, depression, and even psychotic episodes in people with no prior history of mental illness. I've seen tough, experienced outdoorsmen break down completely when faced with genuine survival stress. Now imagine that happening to your teenager or your spouse while you're trying to navigate 50 miles of dangerous territory. So if bugging out is so dangerous, what's the alternative? The answer is so simple that most people overlook it. Stay put and make your home your fortress. Your home is the ultimate survival shelter. It's weatherproof, it's stocked with supplies, you know every inch of it, you have relationships with your neighbors, you're familiar with local resources and escape routes. Most importantly, it's where help will look for you first if help is available. The vast majority of emergency situations, even severe ones, don't require evacuation. They require sheltering in place and waiting for conditions to improve. Power outages, severe storms, and even civil unrest are typically localized and temporary. By staying home, you maximize your resources and comfort. But what about the situations where evacuation really is necessary? Wildfire, flood, chemical spill, or incoming military action. Even then, your primary focus should be on early evacuation using established transportation routes, not on some elaborate wilderness bug-out plan.
The key is having realistic, flexible plans that account for actual threats in your area. If you live in wildfire country, have multiple evacuation routes mapped out and keep your car fueled and ready. If you're in hurricane territory, know where the official evacuation shelters are and how to get there safely. The goal isn't to become Rambo. It's to be a smart, prepared citizen who can protect their family using practical, proven strategies rather than dangerous fantasies. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't prepare for the possibility of having to leave your home. What I'm saying is that your preparation should be realistic, practical, and focused on real-world scenarios rather than Hollywood fantasy. First, build a real community network. Get to know your neighbors, join local emergency response groups, participate in community preparedness exercises. When disaster strikes, you want to be part of the solution, not an isolated individual trying to go it alone. Second, focus on making your home more resilient. Install backup power systems, build up food and water storage, create defensible positions and communication capabilities. Develop multiple sources for critical supplies. Your home should be so well prepared that leaving it feels like a major downgrade in safety and comfort. Third, if you do need evacuation plans, make them realistic. Plan routes to specific destinations where you're expected and welcome. Cache supplies along those routes, if possible. Practice the routes regularly and have backup options. But remember, the goal is to get to another safe building, not to live in the wilderness. Fourth, invest in skills over gear. Learn first aid and medical care. Develop mechanical skills for maintaining vehicles and equipment. Practice communication techniques. Build physical fitness gradually and sustainably. Study local geography and resources. The more capable you are, the less dependent you become on external systems. Finally, prepare for the most likely scenarios first. If you live in tornado country, focus on tornado preparedness. If flooding is your biggest risk, prepare for floods. Don't get distracted by unlikely scenarios while ignoring probable ones. Here's the most important thing I want you to understand. Survival isn't about being the toughest or having the most gear. It's about making smart decisions based on realistic assessments of risk and capability. The survivors in real emergency situations are rarely the people who planned for Mad Max scenarios. They're the people who maintained their common sense, stayed flexible, worked with others, and focused on practical solutions to immediate problems. Your survival plan shouldn't be based on what looks cool in movies or what sounds impressive to other preppers. It should be based on your actual capabilities, your real environment, and the genuine threats you're likely to face. That means being honest about your fitness level, your skills, your family's needs, and your local conditions. It means preparing for probable scenarios rather than exciting ones. And it means understanding that in most cases, The best survival strategy is to not need to survive in the first place. If what I've shared today has made you reconsider your current preparedness strategy, then I've done my job. Because the goal isn't to scare you. It's to help you make decisions that will actually keep you and your family alive when it matters most. The reality is that effective preparedness requires real knowledge, practical skills, and tested strategies. It's not enough to buy gear and hope for the best. You need proven systems that have been tested in real-world conditions by people who understand the true nature of survival situations. That's exactly what you'll find in the comprehensive preparedness system I want to share with you. This isn't another fantasy survival course filled with unrealistic scenarios. This is practical, tested knowledge that could genuinely save your life. Look, I've spent years studying survival situations, training with experts, and learning from people who've actually lived through disasters. What I've learned is that the difference between survivors and casualties usually comes down to preparation, knowledge, and decision-making, not gear or toughness. The people who survive real disasters are the ones who prepared intelligently, made realistic plans, and had access to proven strategies when they needed them most. They didn't try to reinvent the wheel or rely on untested theories. They used knowledge that had been refined through experience and proven under pressure. If you're serious about protecting your family, not just dreaming about being a survival hero, then you need access to this kind of tested, practical knowledge. You need strategies that have been proven to work in real-world situations by real people facing genuine threats. That's exactly what this comprehensive preparedness system provides. It's not about selling you more gear or feeding your survival fantasies. It's about giving you the knowledge and skills you need to make smart decisions when your family's safety depends on it. Right now, you have the opportunity to access this complete preparedness system that covers everything from realistic threat assessment to practical survival skills, from home hardening strategies to community building techniques. This isn't theoretical knowledge. These are proven strategies developed by people who've actually faced life and death situations and lived to tell about it. The kind of practical, tested information that could mean the difference between your family surviving a crisis or becoming another casualty statistic.
But here's the thing, this information isn't going to be available forever at this price point. The knowledge contained in this system is too valuable, and the results it produces are too important. If you're ready to move beyond survival fantasy and start building real preparedness based on proven strategies, then click the link below right now. Your family's safety could depend on the decision you make in the next few minutes. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. The next crisis won't wait for you to get prepared. Remember, the goal of preparedness isn't to hope for disaster so you can test your survival skills. The goal is to be so well prepared that you can protect your family without having to become a survival statistic. The choice is yours. You can keep dreaming about unrealistic bug-out scenarios that are more likely to get you killed than save you. Or you can start building real preparedness based on proven strategies that have actually worked when people needed them most. The information is available. The choice is yours. But don't wait, because when disaster strikes, it'll be too late to wish you had prepared differently. Click the link in the description now and take the first step toward real preparedness that could actually save your life.